It was supposed to be just another call on a cold Vermont evening, nothing unusual on the surface. But within minutes, officers would find themselves in a life-or-death struggle. A decorated police captain would be bleeding from a shotgun blast to the face and arm.
Oh, shit!
Oh my God!
And fellow officers would have to make split-second choices that meant the difference between survival and tragedy. This is the true story of the Vermont domestic assault call that turned into one of the most harrowing moments of the year. Stay with us, because what you are about to hear is raw, real, and shocking. It was late in the evening when dispatch received a call reporting a domestic assault. Neighbors had heard shouting, maybe even something breaking inside the home. For officers, domestic calls are among the most dangerous. The emotions are high, alcohol or weapons can often be involved, and even a calm scene can erupt into violence in seconds. But no one on the Vermont force that night could have predicted just how fast things would spiral out of control. A team of officers was dispatched, including a seasoned captain who had led countless calls before. He was respected, steady under pressure, and committed to the job. As the officers approached the house, everything seemed quiet at first. The windows were dark, the yard still. But that silence was deceptive. Behind those walls, the suspect was waiting armed with a shotgun. The moment the officers got close enough, the house erupted. A deafening blast of a shotgun shattered the night. In an instant, the captain was hit. The pellets tore into his face and arm. He went down bleeding and dazed. The audio from the body cam captures the horror as officers screamed, "Bullet in the face! He's been hit!" Chaos exploded. Some officers scrambled for cover, others rushed to the captain's side. The danger was not over. The suspect was still inside, weapon in hand, possibly preparing to fire again. The officers were trapped in a deadly standoff. They could not abandon their captain, but every second they stayed exposed risked more lives. What would you do if your commanding officer was down and the shooter was still inside, ready to fire again? The injured captain was conscious but fading. His fellow officers knew the first priority was survival. An ambulance was requested immediately. But in the chaos of rural Vermont roads, waiting could mean death. That is when the decision was made. They would not wait for EMS. They would scoop him up and drive him to the hospital themselves. Two officers lifted him, blood running down his uniform, and dragged him toward a patrol car. The transcript captures their frantic voices. "We need an ambulance now." "Sit down, keep talking." "Stay awake." Their words were not just commands, they were desperate pleas. Trying to keep the captain conscious, trying to stop shock from setting in. Inside the patrol car, the scene was no calmer. One officer drove at high speed, lights flashing, weaving through traffic. Another sat with the captain in the back seat, pressing on his wounds, urging him to breathe. "Keep talking. Eyes open, stay with me." Every bump in the road felt like an eternity. Every second mattered. Will he make it to the hospital in time? Or will the wounds prove too much to survive? As the sirens wailed, the patrol car cut through the night. The captain groaned in pain but fought to stay conscious. His colleagues kept talking to him, telling him it would be okay, promising him he would see the hospital soon. One officer reassured him again and again, "You're fine. You're going to be okay." But beneath those words was raw fear. They all knew how serious the injuries were. Shotgun blasts are devastating, and a hit to the face and arm could mean massive blood loss, shock, and organ damage. Yet the captain refused to give up. He stayed awake, even managing to speak through the pain. "Everywhere. I've been shot everywhere," he muttered. The officers squeezed his hand, begging him to hold on. "We're almost there. Just a little longer." In that patrol car, time stretched. The drive could not have been more than a few minutes, but to those inside, it felt like forever. Every second was a test of endurance, of willpower, of life hanging by a thread. Imagine the fear of driving full speed, knowing that the man bleeding beside you might not see another sunrise. At last, the hospital lights appeared. Relief washed over the officers, but the race was not over. They screeched into the emergency bay, calling for help, shouting for a stretcher. Nurses and doctors rushed outside. The captain was carefully lifted from the patrol car, his face pale, his body trembling. He was rushed inside for emergency treatment. For the officers, the moment was overwhelming. Some leaned against the car, hands shaking, finally letting the weight of what they had just endured hit them. Others immediately turned back to the scene because the job was not finished. The suspect was still inside that house, armed and dangerous. While one battle for survival raged in the hospital, another was still unfolding back at the crime scene. But what about the man inside the house, the one who pulled the trigger? Police still had to face him. While their captain fought for his life, officers established a perimeter around the suspect's home. The man inside had already proven he was willing to shoot without warning. Negotiators were called, tactical teams assembled. The house was surrounded. For hours, tension gripped the neighborhood. Families were evacuated, roads closed, and spotlights lit up the street. The suspect remained inside, refusing to surrender. Officers shouted commands, tried to reach him, but he stayed silent. Every minute that passed raised the stakes. Would he come out peacefully, or would more violence erupt? Finally, after a standoff that tested patience and nerves, the suspect was taken into custody. The captain's injuries were severe, but thanks to the quick response of his fellow officers and the medical staff, he survived. The road to recovery would be long. Multiple surgeries, rehabilitation, and emotional healing were required. Yet the story became one of resilience and brotherhood. The entire community rallied around him, raising funds, offering support, and standing by the police department in solidarity. For the officers who were with him that night, the memories will never fade. The sound of the shotgun, the sight of their captain bleeding, the frantic drive to the hospital. These moments will forever be etched into their minds. The Vermont captain survived because of the courage of his team and the speed of their actions. He survived because in those darkest moments, they refused to leave him behind. And he survived because the will to live can be stronger than even the deadliest of wounds. So as you watch this story, remember the sacrifice. Remember the fear, remember the courage, and let it remind you that every day, officers stand between danger and safety for all of us.